Pause it, baby. Go on. Something happened there.
Hello, I'm here.
Yeah,
I can hear you.
yeah. I don't know what happened. It ended stream. Um.
No, it says we're live, man.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. Maybe it's me. Sorry. Good evening, everybody. We are back. It is the Safety and the Sportswriter show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe. We're here to put to rest, I guess, the 2023, 2024 football season and start looking at 2024. Nate, how are you doing tonight, first of all, and how's everything going?
Doing pretty good, man. It was as me and you discussed, an entertaining Super Bowl. That's all. I mean, I didn't really care who won. I just wanted to see a good, entertaining game, and we got that. One thing, we'll get into the game in depth tonight, obviously, but one thing that's kind of the biggest thing that's bugging me is, I don't know if you've gone on Twitter, X, or whatever the F it's called these days, but a lot of people have been posting these holding calls that weren't, or excuse me, non-holding calls where Nick Bosa, Chase Young, several of the 49ers defenders were just getting manhandled the entire game. And, some people brought it up on some of the shows that I listened to on NFL radio. And a lot of the guys were like, well, everybody, if they did call them, people would be complaining that there were too many holding calls. And there was only, 10 or 11 holding calls or 10 or 11 penalties the whole game. We think the crew did a good job. And I'm like, wait a second. If one team is holding more than another team and it's giving them a distinct advantage, how is that fair? Because I didn't see the 49ers offensive line holding. In fact, they weren't blocking at all. They were just letting the Kansas City Chiefs defenders run right at Brock Purdy the entire game. And that was a big issue. But Patrick Mahomes had all day to throw it because, those two guys, Taylor and what's the other guy's name? The one that came from Tampa Bay, Donovan Smith. Him and Taylor are the two most penalized tackles in the league. Yet somehow, during the Super Bowl, they don't get one call. And I just think, you if it's egregious, you've got to throw the flag. You have to throw the flag.
Well, the rules are there for a reason. I really don't think Goodell made any instructions or anybody to not do things. Sometimes, the thing about officials is they're humans. And I'm sure in the back of their minds, and maybe Andy Reid's reputation gets him a little bit. Maybe he works the officials a little bit better than Shanahan does. There's things like that go on. But holding always will be, I don't care if it's defensive holding, offensive holding, pass interference, these calls where the guys put their hands on each other, there is no right or wrong when it comes down to an end, because the fact of the matter is, it's all the eye of the beholder. But like you said, when one team has 10 and the other team has 2, well, as I would say in a baseball analogy, the strike zone is different for both teams. Because it shouldn't be that much of a differential, because they both do the same things.
Well, and one team is benefiting from doing it. I mean, I didn't see the Niners holding that much. I mean, most of the time they weren't blocking anybody, and Chris Jones was just running free, and that was part of the problem. But these tackles for Kansas City, they've been an issue all year long. I mean, Patrick Mahomes hasn't been getting blown up, but there's been a lot of holding penalties on these two guys, and they are, right there for the top of the league in holding penalties. and then all of a sudden in the Super Bowl, they don't call any. And it just, there was. I'm not saying that you need to call. You could call holding on every play.
Yeah,
I'm aware of that. I understand that. I'm not saying to call it on every play. I hate penalties more than anything.
right.
But when a team is just gaining a distinct advantage because they're just grabbing Nick Bosa around the neck on every single play, that to me is just a little not good for the competition committee, at least.
No, it's not, and it's something they're going to have to look into. And I'm sure that the competition committee is going to say, okay, we got to pay attention to this now, because it's a shame that it has to come down to the biggest game of the year where they start focusing and saying, okay, guys. But the refereeing. Well, we've talked about this at length. I still don't understand how a $1 billion industry doesn't have full-time referees and doesn't have these guys. With I hate to say it like this, I'm like ageism, but why do we have 60-year-old men trying to catch up with guys that are world-class sprinters? You have so many athletes out there that don't make teams that could be employed as officials in the NFL. You've got a slew of athletes that could be out there running around and making a difference and making a good difference out there, but they continue to not go out there and employ referees full time. Every other, it makes no sense.
Right, I agree. And who was called for the most penalties in the entire 2023 season of any player at any position? Jawan Taylor, the right tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Yet, this game was a clean game, I guess. I don't know. It just and then Smith. He is, up there. He's one of the top, he's one of the top players every year. Remember the last year in Tampa Bay, that was the reason that they moved off of him, was because he just couldn't block worth a darn. And he just held every time that Brady, went back to pass, because he didn't want to get, he didn't want to be the guy that broke Brady. And so he just grabbed everybody. And I saw a lot of that on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, and the other thing about as it turned out, Steve Wilkes ended up losing his job over it.
Yeah.
First of all, having Greenlaw go down.
Yeah, that was huge.
I mean, that opened up the middle of the field. That was the thing that they depend on those two linebackers controlling the middle of the field, and that just opened the whole damn thing up for Patrick Mahomes. You can't give him that kind of open space.
No, you're right. That was a huge part of the game, and it wasn't even while the game was going on.
Right.
So after a change of possession, he was running out onto the field and ripped his Achilles. And after that, I don't know if you noticed, but after that, the 49ers defense did not look the same. I mean, they still did a good job, but that was it was different after he was gone.
You know what he brings to that team? He brings that edge. He is always on the verge of getting a fight or doing something stupid. Where Warner is the perfect linebacker, he's the anti-Warner. He's the guy who's the policeman out there. He's the guy who has these guys with their heads on a swivel. And that took a lot of the punch, especially, when you talk about whether it was holding or wasn't holding, they were able to control the offensive line. And we know that their defensive backfield is not the strongest part. Warner and Greenlaw are the second level of their defense. After that, they're kind of a pedestrian defense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And they're already missing, their all-pro safety who tore his ACL, Topunga. But, Greenlaw in the NFC Championship game, he was the reason they won when he picked off Jordan Love twice and sealed the game. He made one huge interception in the middle of the game, and then he sealed the game with his second interception. And you're right, when him being out was a crucial component of them losing, in my opinion. And I didn't really I'm not trying to be mean or pick on this guy, but I have to be honest with just the eye test. I didn't really like the way that Wilkes called the game. I mean, if you go back and you look at last year's defense with D'Amico Ryans, and then you go and you put that same defense, the tape next to each other, it looks different. It just looked different this year, and it was the same guys. And that's that's why he's fired. So I don't really need to go into that too in depth. I mean, it's not just me that saw it.
No,
Shanahan saw it too.
no, I definitely agree. Steve Wilkes, I mean, we all know he got a bad deal when down in Carolina when he did a good job down there, and everybody felt sorry for him there. And I think that's a lot of reason why he got the job in a way. Yep. Shanahan wanted to help him out because he thought he did a good job. These coaches are, a lot of them are friends and we'll stick up for each other. And but I mean, I've never seen Steve Wilkes. I've never watched, and I don't look into it as in depth as you do. But he does, when you start talking about the top D coordinators in football, his name, it takes a while for someone to get around to him, and and he's been around for a while,
Yeah, no, I agree, and he actually deserved to get the head coaching. I thought he did better as a head coach than he did as a defensive coordinator down in Carolina, and he should have been the head guy. He should have got the job.
He's the opposite of Spagnuolo.
Exactly, and that's what I was gonna. That's where I was gonna segue into is Steve Spagnuolo. I'm so glad that he won another Super Bowl. I'm so glad that he picked up his 4th Super Bowl championship as a D coordinator, the most of any coordinator, offense or defense, of all time, because people are actually giving this guy credit. I mean, the reason that the Kansas City Chiefs won all these games all year and won the Super Bowl, it wasn't Patrick Mahomes is great, maybe the greatest quarterback of all time, or may be end up the greatest quarterback of all time. But the reason that this year that this team won the Super Bowl was Steve Spagnuolo and their defense. They held teams to 17.5 points all year long. And then in the playoffs, with the most rugged playoff schedule that I've ever seen any team go through in my life, they held those teams to 15.5 points throughout that playoff run. And we're not talking about a bunch of schmoes. We're talking about Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins. We're talking about Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. We're talking about the MVP and Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. And then we're talking about Brock Purdy and the 49ers. And they held them all to 15.5 points.
And I mean, going on the road and taking care of business on the road, which they hadn't done yet. And it was big. I mean, Spagnuolo, he still says that he wants to be a head coach. If I was his friend or his brother, I might sit there and go, you understand that you can write your own check as a D coordinator for the rest of your life and live a very happy life without having to go through the crap that a head coach has to go to. And it's only getting more and more complicated as we see to be a head coach at whatever level. So if I was a friend of Steve Spagnuolo's, I'd go, nice little job, nice little gig there. And I'm sure Kansas City will take care of you.
Well, not only that, but, he just signed an extension yesterday. He signed an extension with the Chiefs, and it's, well-deserved. And you know what? The Chiefs, no one wants to say this, and, I feel even bad saying this, but the Chiefs do need to have a succession plan for Andy Reid. He's already had 2, health scares over the past 3 years. And, he's not a young man. No. He's not in the best shape of his life, and he's had health problems. He can barely walk with his hip issue. And so, he's not going to be the coach there forever. And if you have a guy like Steve Spagnuolo that not only is the best defensive coordinator or one of the best defensive coordinators in all of football, but has been a head coach and understands the culture of this team and the makeup of it, I mean, he could, if need be, step in and take over for Andy Reid, for a period of time, or for forever if he has to.
Yeah, and let's go on the other side of the ball. Shanahan, we all know his resume. We all know he's one of the best play callers in football. But right now, he's gotten to that place. And I mean, I can go back to years ago. I mean, when I was a little kid, before Tom Landry won a Super Bowl, everybody said he couldn't win the big game. This is something all these coaches have to face. You go through this until you get it done. There's doubt you can get it done. And now he's been to 2 Super Bowls, 4 consecutive NFC championships, and he's not held up a Lombardi trophy. And if you want to go back to being the offensive coordinator, that wasn't his fault all the way, but it was him and Quinn down there at Atlanta and let that comeback happen against the Patriots. That's 5 instances on the biggest stages where I'm not going to say he came up small, but he's not holding the trophy at the end of the game.
Well, and we've discussed what happened in the game and the issues with special teams and all that, but let's just be honest. He goes away from the run when the game is on the line. He gets pass happy. He did it when they were up 28-3. He refused to run the football, and that cost the Falcons a Super Bowl. Well, he did the same thing. If you go to the third quarter, when things started to kind of unravel a little bit for the 49ers, they had 3 and outs in a row,
right?
And there was 11 plays, and 10 of them were passes. Okay, that's not right, especially when you're running the ball, very well and having success doing it. You can't go away from what your strong suit is. And then that one play, where they, ran it on third down when he third and 3 when he ran it right up the middle when they'd been having success going to the edge. That I'm not going to second guess this guy. He knows more about football than I do, but it does kind of confuse me as to what he's doing in the end of some of these games. It perplexes me to no end.
And the other thing that I can't say this was my idea, but I was listening to a lot of the pregame stuff on Sunday before the game, and somebody brought up, that he expected to see a lot of Deebo Samuel running the ball.
Yeah,
because he thought, you don't have to worry about him getting injured. He's got the whole offseason to get back, and now's the time to just unleash that. And not so much. He didn't do that, and that was a little bit of a disappointment when I was looking at the game that I didn't see more, because Deebo is the kind of guy. If nothing else, he moves the chains every time they run him on those sweeps. And sometimes he breaks it longer.
I agree. I expected to see him get the ball more. You don't have to hand it to him. You don't have to throw it to him. You can run little bubble screens. You can run little, jet sweeps. You can do a number of things to get him the football. And I do agree with you. I don't feel like he got enough touches.
Yeah.
And especially at, he's one of their big game breakers. And it was, more Juwan Jennings more than Deebo Samuel in this game, who really, kind of broke the mold. And I love Juwan Jennings. He's a great wide receiver. He's a really good blocking wide receiver. He can catch the ball. They call him third and one because he's always picking up, first downs. And Juwan Jennings, showed up huge in this game. But I was kind of confused as to where the hell Deebo Samuel was and why he didn't get the ball more, and especially in crucial situations.
And then the other thing to bring up, a couple of things to bring up. For let's get to the kicker situation. This kicker's been a problem all year long. And I've been, you and I both watch, if once a kicker gets the yips or whatever, teams don't usually take time and they bring people in. They start looking at people, bringing in people for auditions, doing anything just to see if they can upgrade at that position, because as we saw that night, it kind of cost them the game.
Yeah, and it's weird because this guy is a pretty solid field goal kicker from deep distance, but it's like sometimes when they're closer and the extra points is where he's struggling. He hits at the time the longest field goal in Super Bowl history with the 55-yarder, and then misses a crucial extra point, and that to me is why this guy kind of worries me, because it's not ability. He's got the ability, but it's up here. Yeah. And that, that people are sometimes like, well, it got blocked. And I was like, yeah, because he kicked it 4 feet off the ground. It wasn't like somebody, wow. Javon Curse jumped up 20 feet in the air and blocked it. Somebody went like that and knocked it straight down on the extra point. So that was definitely on him. I feel like they didn't move off from him because they drafted him so high. He was the highest drafted kicker since like 2015, and they felt like they made a big investment in him, and I feel like that's why they stuck with him, and it ended up costing him the game because he makes that extra point, and I don't care what anybody says. End of regulation, they're up by 1, and the game's over.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course we got to go into the choice. Everybody's making the deal out of Shanahan taking the ball first. The only thing I'll say, I didn't care whether he took it or not, but if you're going to take it, realize that you're going against Mahomes. think back to Buffalo a few years ago. You got to score the touchdown. You can't just sit there and settle for a field goal and don't think he's going to come down and at least tie it. And if he's not going to tie it, as he did, he won it. So that's the whole thing. Is that's where you look at Shanahan and you go, you can talk to me about analytics, you can talk about anything, but once you make your decision, you have to know who you're against, and you got to say, no matter what to these guys, Purdy and everybody, Mahomes cannot get the ball without having to cover a touchdown.
Well, and I don't know if you heard his logic behind it, but he said that they wanted the ball first so that if they kicked a field goal and Kansas City kicked the field goal, or they scored a touchdown and Kansas City scored a touchdown, that they would get the ball and be in position to go down and win. Well, the clock ran out. So it would have been a start of a whole new game, and they would have had to flip the coin again because they were going to go into another overtime, essentially a second overtime is what they were going to go into. And also, if you're thinking like that, like you said, you can't just think that they're going to get a field goal is going to be okay, be enough. Right. I knew that Kansas City was going to go down and score a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes knew that they were going to go down and score a touchdown. Andy Reid knew it. Everybody seemed to know it except for Shanahan. So I didn't really like that. Your defense, you're supposed to be known for your defense. You've got a lot of really talented defensive players. Put them out there. Have somebody hopefully make a play, maybe get an interception, cause a fumble, do something, and then you can, go down and kick a field goal and win the game. But just expecting to hold them to a field goal after you kick a field goal, I didn't think was a real, good way to coach it.
No, I think he sputtered. I think he came to he got into the batter's box and didn't have a plan, and. That's how he ended up striking out. And now we'll see. He's coming back. He's going to have a lot of those players coming back, and they're going to be favored again. But he's going to have. It's not going to be. They're going to be everybody's bullseye next year again. And will they have the team to get? And plus, who are they going to lose in the offseason? Who's going to leave?
There's no way that they can keep this entire roster intact. It's just not possible. And Joe, they got Chase Young in the middle of the season, brought him in, and were able to utilize him, and he helped a lot. And that was a rental because his contract's up, and I don't know if they're going to have the money to sign him after already giving Nick Bosa all that money. Right. Luckily, Brock Purdy only cost them about $700,000 a year, so they're riding that high. But they got Christian McCaffrey. They just paid Debo. Brandon Ayuk is going to be up. Jawan Jennings' contract is up. They're already paying Kittle. Juszczyk is long in the tooth. Trent Williams makes a ton of money.
How old is Trent Williams? I mean, how many more times is he going to want to roll it out there? He's in his mid-30s, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean he's 35. He's 35. So, and I got to be honest, we talked a lot about how he's one of the best players in all of football. I still stick with that. He is. But there were times in that Super Bowl where, he looked like he was 35. There's a couple of times where some guys, shook him a little bit, and he was out there about to take out McDuffie on one of those plays that he pulled and was leading in the outside, and McDuffie kind of gave him the shimmy, and he went to the ground, and then McDuffie made the tackle. And, he's 35 years old, man. He's played in the NFL for a long time. He was drafted, I'm trying to remember what year that was, 2010 was the year he was drafted number 4 overall by the Washington Redskins. And so, this guy, he's not going to be out there forever. I mean, I think he may have a couple of years left, but who knows?
Maybe not. So, I mean, we got to at least bring up, Pat Mahomes before we get into other things too. I want to start looking at like a little bit of the draft situation coming up. I mean, Mahomes now is going up there with the legend. He's already in the legendary names. The things that came to mind with me was like Tiger Woods on a Sunday afternoon at a golf course at Augusta or something. Of course, Michael Jordan and LeBron. he's got that kind of mentality in big games. And as we said, you have to, if you come for the king, you got to kill him. And Shanahan didn't kill him, and we gave him time, and he saw what happened.
Yeah, I mean, and I know I was critical of the holding, but you got to bring an extra guy or something. I mean, you have to go after him. And there was times where they did go after him, and then they were in man coverage, and they left the middle of the field open, and then he killed him with his legs.
Yeah.
And that's just who this guy is. I mean, I know that I talked about, the defense of Kansas City, and obviously I was enamored with Steve Spagnuolo and their defense this year. They were just phenomenal. But you got to – facts are facts, man. 34 of 46 for 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then he ran 9 times for 66 yards at 7.3 a clip. I mean, this guy, he loves the big moment. He wills his team to victory. He's one of those guys, like you just mentioned, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, whoever. He can put guys on his back and carry them across the finish line, and he did it again.
Yeah. So as we look back on this season, give me your biggest disappointment and your biggest surprise.
Whew. I guess my biggest surprise, honestly, was that defense and how well they played. I mean, they played well last year. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl, but I just, we talked all year about the issues at the receiver position, and there were issues. Everyone knew about it. Some of those guys stepped up, really well come the Super Bowl. But this defense, the reason they made the Super Bowl was because this defense played so well all year. I mean, I think about that conference championship game and holding that Ravens team to 10 points. I mean, that to me was surprising. Not right. Because I didn't think this team was great, but just because that was just in Baltimore, holding Lamar to 10 points. It just was truly phenomenal. I mean, one of the biggest disappointments, I guess I have to say for me, is obviously the Jets. Blowing out the Achilles on the 4th play of the game. I mean, that could only happen to the New York Jets, Joe. I mean, come on, man. You've lived in the New York City area a long time. Would that happen to any other team? I mean, no. I was so excited, Joe. I've been a Jets fan since I was about 5-6 years old. And that was the first time that I can remember that I'm sitting there on opening night. Like, I had goosebumps on my arms, and I was just like, oh, my gosh, this is what it's like to have a quarterback. This is what it's like to have a shot at, making the playoffs or maybe going further than that. Who knows? And then it was all over on the 4th offensive play of the game, and it was brutal. And, we talked about it at length, ad nauseum on this show. It just was a horrible mistake to, alert the world that you don't believe in Zach Wilson, go out and spend $60 million and a king's ransom trade to get Aaron Rodgers so you don't have to play Zach Wilson, and then you leave him on the roster so that he's then your starting quarterback after the 4th play of the year. That, to me, was the biggest disappointment of the season. Maybe I'm biased, but that was.
I mean, I'm along that line, but the one thing I will say is, like, I want to see, and I'm a Giant fan, but I've always liked Robert Saleh, and I've defended him. But since the end of the season, he's not doing himself any favors when he comes out and speaks and stuff. I mean, trying to not be truthful. He should be truthful and say, we did not do a good job. No. I mean, we talked about, you had a run, you had a stable of 2 great running backs. You didn't use them. You kept thinking that Zach Wilson, the light bulb was going to go out in his head and something would work out, and it didn't. So they deserve the crap they're getting now, and they're on notice for next year. Both him and Joe Douglas. For me, the biggest surprise, I think, was Jordan Love, and how in the middle of the season this kid suddenly got it. And I think for the Lions, as much as I love what Goff and those guys are doing up there, they're on notice right now. they're not going to have a cakewalk next year because the Packers are real. That offense is young, and when Jordan Love looks like he's the real deal, and I think in a way, their coach is happy to have a young quarterback instead of a veteran telling them how to coach. And my biggest disappointment, I got to say, as much as I loved watching it, because I am a Giant fan, is the Eagles. You start out as strong as they do. I know Jalen Hurts will finally maybe get the injury report on him. I'm sure they were hiding injuries on him all year long. He was not normal, but it was like, they did a bad job bringing in coordinators to replace the two coordinators that they lost, and it showed throughout the year. They didn't have the answers.
Well, you know what? I'm not as down on the Eagles as a lot of people. I mean, you look at it, they still made the playoffs. They were 11-6. They finished, second in the NFC East. All that, I get it. It was a monumental collapse. I understand all that, but this was still a very good football team. In my opinion, like you said, I didn't like the coordinator hires. They proved to be not good choices. And then B, I think they may have leveraged themselves a little bit too long with some of these veterans. They're just rolling these guys out that were 35,
right,
34 years old. Graham, Fletcher Cox, Kelsey. Yeah. I still think Jason Kelsey can play, but even he at times was showing his age. And you look at the team that won the Super Bowl, the youngest defense in the NFL with an average age of 25 was the best defense and ended up winning the Super Bowl under Steve Spagnuolo. So I in my opinion, I know they drafted some younger guys with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and all that, but it just, to me, it looked like maybe they hung on to some of these guys a little bit too long. Lane Johnson, as great as he is, he's been banged up quite a bit, and was battling injuries all year. Jalen Hurts, they just ran him too much, and I believe kind of ran him into the ground because he was not the same player at the end of the season. He just couldn't run the football much anymore, and they just lacked kind of that punch on defense. To me, was the biggest thing. Their defense was just garbage a lot of the time, and it couldn't even stop the run.
Yeah, you got to think the Chiefs did that all on the fly. They redid their defense on the fly in the middle of what is now looking to be a dynasty. They just that kind of was like what the Patriots did for a while. You know what I mean? It's like they being ready to make the hard decision and say, hey, we got to move on. But I want to get we got a little bit of time left here. I want to bring up the draft quarterback rankings. Of course, everybody's Caleb Williams and Drake Mayer and Jaden Daniels are the first three. You've been watching the pro or the Senior Bowls and stuff. Who do you think are the next guys? Michael Penix, Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy? Who's in there for you?
Caleb Williams to me is the biggest question mark in my mind. I mean, I know a lot of people have him rated number one and feel like he's the best prospect, but I don't know if I see that. I mean, to me, he reminds me a lot of Bryce Young, and he's smallish, and Kyler Murray, Bryce Young. I mean, I just don't know if that's the ceiling. Then what are you really talking about here? But we all know this is a crapshoot.
Yeah.
But I just feel like if I look at the Senior Bowl practices as a whole, Michael Penix was the best thrower of the football all week long. And I know he didn't play in the game, which I don't blame him. With his injury history, there's no reason for him to go out there, especially the way that he performed during the week. Bo Nix, to me, had a rough week of practice, especially the way it started. He struggled big time. He got better, I think, as the week went on. But the first 3 days, it looked like Bo Nix from Auburn. And that to me was kind of concerning. And, is Bo Nix really a great quarterback, or was he more product of the system out there in Oregon? And I think, to me, he was a little bit more of the system. And I'm not as high on him as some other people. But I did really like what I saw out of Spencer Rattler.
I heard a lot of good things about him.
Man, he looked great all week long, and then in the game, he ended up being the MVP and was really, really throwing the ball well. So, I think that some of these teams may get lucky, maybe not being the first, taking the quarterback in the first three guys. I think some of these other dudes can really, really make some hay later in the draft. And I'm talking about Michael Penix. I'm talking about obviously the guy I just mentioned, Spencer Rattler, and I think there may be a couple more that sneak in there. Joe Milton from Tennessee, he looked horrible in the game, but this is a guy that can throw the ball.
And he's got the size too.
And he's got the size, he's got the arm in the right system. I think he could be a guy that he needs to sit and learn. Okay, I don't think he's ready to play right away, but this is a guy you can draft in the second round. Maybe the early third round and have a project for a guy that can make something happen.
Yeah, worked for Jordan Love. The one thing about Spencer Rattler, he's another one that's smallish. He's 6 foot. That's another thing that's going to be, another one where he's got to go to the right place and have an offensive coordinator who knows how to deal with that, and come up with how to deal with the fact that get him out of the pocket, get him on the edges, do some different things with him. What about it's not really I was reading through the early scouting. You got Caleb Williams, you got Drake May, Daniels, Penix, Nix, McCarthy, Rattler, and then it kind of drops off. I don't know. They got Michael Pratt as the next one on the scouting thing I'm looking at from Tulane, and they put him above Joe Milton, which I was a little surprised of. Sam Hartman didn't really do anything special at Notre Dame to get himself on that. And then you got Tua's little brother coming out of Maryland, but he's another one, 5'10". A lot of smallish quarterbacks coming out this year.
Yeah, and Talia Tagovailoa, he wanted to transfer and continue playing in college, and they were like, "Man, you're out of eligibility, bro. You can't keep playing in college." So I mean, he wanted to come back because I think he knew that his draft stock wasn't very high. He is a guy that did a lot of stuff that he should be proud of at Maryland, but I don't know if he's ready to play in the NFL, and I don't know if he'll ever be there. To be honest with you, Michael Pratt is a guy that to me you can take and potentially develop. So I think he could be a guy third, fourth round. You take him and you may hit pay dirt with him. Sam Hartman, man, he didn't look good all week in practice, and then during the game. It was just bad. It was just really, really bad. The arm strength looked horrible. The decision making looked bad. This was a guy who at Wake Forest, I think, was a product of the offense. To be honest with you, I mean they were a throw first offense. They had A.T. Perry and some really good wide receivers and a really good system, and it made him look good. And I think he got exposed a little bit at Notre Dame, and it's kind of gone downhill from there. J.J. McCarthy, he to me is the biggest mystery, and I'm not saying this because I hate him and I'm a Buckeye fan. I'm just saying this because there were times where he did some things and you were like, wow, that's impressive. I'd like to see more of that. And then you continue watching and you're like, whoa, this is the worst part of their offense is their quarterback play on this Michigan team. So I don't know what this guy's going to be in the NFL. Will somebody draft him? Yes. Will someone draft him in the first round? I don't think so. I think if he gets selected in the third round, I think that'll be about right where I would take him. But I can't really tell you what this guy's game is going to look like in the NFL because he was just kind of inconsistent at Michigan, and he wasn't asked to do a whole lot, Joe.
No,
he was asked to hand the ball off. He had to make some plays occasionally, and he was able to do it at times. Other times he could not. And I do agree with you. I think there's a drop-off. I like what I saw out of Drake May. I know this season wasn't as good as last season, but he's still a young guy, and he's shown to be accurate. I do think that Jaden Daniels is getting downplayed a little bit, and I don't know why. I don't know how you can watch that guy play last year and not be enamored because he was – the best player in college football. And, Wow, I think he could be a difference maker if he goes to the right team in the NFL.
If you win a Heisman trophy under Brian Kelly, you're doing something right, because
Yeah,
he's ruined more quarterbacks than any coach in football.
that's what I'm saying, man. I mean, that offense was just super legit, and it was mainly because of this guy and his abilities. And he played well at Arizona State before he got to LSU, so it wasn't like he came out of nowhere. I liked him for the Sun Devils before he arrived. The thing that's gonna really shape this whole draft and is gonna be the first domino that falls, and every other domino behind it is gonna be off of this first thing, and that's what happens with Justin Fields in Chicago.
Yeah,
and that's going to shape the entire draft, because do they stay there, and do they take Drake May or take Caleb Williams or take somebody, or do they trade down again and stick with Justin Fields? And my feeling. Justin Fields is a good player, and they need to build around him. Now, whether or not they will do that, I doubt they will. They haven't been loyal to anyone, Joe. If you go back to that, since Jim McMahon, they have not been loyal to a quarterback or to a coach. So I just don't see them doing it. But I think if they were smart, they would keep the guy that they invested in and that they've invested time in. He's had a different damn coordinator and a different head coach pretty much every year. And I think that's slowed his progression. But this is a guy who's proven it at times that he could be a winner.
Well, the thing about it is that, you already know what he can and can't do.
Exactly.
So you put an offense around. You put an offense that does the thing that he can do. I mean, this is the problem. Like you're saying, they start over again every 3 years, every 4 years. They start. It isn't even 2 years. I mean, they're starting over again. How can you? I mean, maybe because I'm a Giant fan and we're loyal to a fault. We will wait till the guy has to be run out of town before we give up on these quarterbacks. But I mean, at least we know we gave him a fair shot. And as a Giant fan, you're not sitting there going, "Gee, look what he's doing on another team," and that's the biggest thing. I would keep him. I would keep him. I like you said, there's not enough proof in Caleb Williams, and I worry about Caleb Williams because I think he's got an attitude problem.
I do too.
I think he has to be knocked down a few pegs. I think everybody's just blowing sunshine up his butt, and I think he's going to be a problem.
I do too. And even if you decide you want to draft another quarterback, well, you keep Justin Fields, and then you've got two, and then you go from there. I mean, that's to me is the the last thing I would do is get rid of Justin Fields. If you don't feel 100% confident in him, and you want to double your ante, and you want to bring someone else in, that's been done before. I mean, the Chargers did it when they had Drew Brees, and they went out and drafted another quarterback. Yeah, they went out and drafted Phillip Rivers. So this has been done before, and it's worked in the past. So if you want to draft somebody and push Justin, I don't have a problem with that. But just to give up on him. When some people are just this whole city of Chicago and football fans in general, to me, seem like they're divided. I made a tweet about Justin Fields yesterday. Somebody posted something on X about the Steelers wanting him over Kenny Pickett, and I just said, well, if you're comparing Kenny Pickett and Justin Fields, there's no comparison. Justin Fields is loads better. Well, that is the biggest tweet that I've ever posted, because there was 10,000 comments on it, and I've never seen any post from me has never gotten any type of coverage like that. But I think it's because it's such a hot topic, and that so many people are on both sides of the fence, that it's just generating a lot of buzz, and I get that. So if you're not 100% sure about this kid, then bring somebody else in. But I think the biggest mistake they could make is letting him go somewhere else after they've spent this time and this money and this investment in him, and then watching him go somewhere else, because there's other teams interested. The Falcons are interested. The Commanders are interested. The Steelers are interested. There's other teams that want this Justin Fields, and they want him on their team.
I wouldn't mind the Giants taking a good look at him. I mean, at least he plays. I mean, Daniel Jones, when you talk about disappointments, I mean, there's a guy who last year had everything to play for, and it looked like that one good year is going to be all he's going to have because he's injury prone. That's just a fact of him. But anyways, we're rolling down to the end of the game or the end of the show tonight. We're going to be back next week again. We'll start, looking at the draft, looking at the free agent market. And I want to get into a little college basketball next week. There's some stuff that's lurking out there as we head into March that is bothering me a little bit, and I want to get your opinion on that. And we'll do that next week. No football. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself this weekend.
Well, luckily the combine is right around the corner, so we can talk about the combine, Joe. Don't fret, don't get upset.
Okay.
We got the combine. We can break down the combine like nobody's business. We can talk about every position group and who's gonna, wow us at the combine.
There you go.
And, who's not invited that should be, and all that good stuff. And then we got the draft. So the football's never over. Don't worry about a thing.
Thank God.
And luckily we got college basketball and the NBA to keep us going. I don't know if you noticed. But the Tennessee Vols pistol whipped the Arkansas Razorbacks last night, 92-63 in Fayetteville. The first time the Tennessee Vols have beat Arkansas in Fayetteville in 7 years. Well, so big win, win for the Vols.
I don't know if you've been watching up Northeast, but the Big East is back.
Yeah,
the Big East is the big beast right now. There's going to be some shakeouts at the end, and that's what I want to get into next week. A little thing where St. John's might get screwed in the end because of a stupid NCAA ruling.
Yeah. I'd say right now the Big East and the SEC, in my opinion, are definitely the two best conferences. The SEC is just a juggernaut this year. I think they may break the record for the most teams going into the tournament that they've ever had. And that's just because of the depth of the conference. I've never seen this league this deep in my life. I mean, you look down at about the 12th, 10th team, Mississippi State. They're 16-8, buddy. And that's one of the lower teams, and they're 16-8, and they've got some good quad one wins. Kentucky, who's as talented as anybody. They're getting knocked around in the SEC. They're 7-4. They've dropped to 22 in the polls, and this is a team that's got 4 or 5 top 5 players, and they're having trouble winning night in and night out in the SEC.
Yeah, and my other Northeast team, or Northeast league I watch, of course, is the Ivy League, and Princeton might get screwed. And they've got, I think, 19 wins, 18 wins now, but they are 2 behind Yale in the conference. So they're going to have to win their conference out, and they don't. They're not going. So it's going to be interesting end of February and March. So that will take us through to that, and we're looking forward to that. Buddy, have a great night and a great weekend. Anything special going on this weekend? Yeah,
we're taking off tomorrow to head up to Ohio. It is my grandfather, George Frank. It is his 96th birthday.
Wow, thank God bless him.
We're going up there to hang out with him and spend some time with him and hear the stories and just have fun. So we're going to go up there tomorrow, spend the whole weekend in Columbus, buy some more Buckeye gear, and hang out. Hey, buddy, there's never enough. We got helmets, we got vests, we got shirts, we got
scarlet. Who doesn't look good in scarlet and silver?
Exactly, man. It's hard to look bad in this stuff.
Right. Have a good rest of the night, my friend. I will talk to you next week.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.